traveling, you just left church, you just left the supermarket, you're headed home with your family, everything's quiet, going well, and all of a sudden, bam, you hit a deer, the deer hits you. And at first you think, this ain't that big a deal, we call the insurance company, we get the car fixed. But too many times it can be very dangerous. And if you look here, you can see where that deer went through the windshield, and obviously could have easily caused a fatality. This deer here was shown through a traffic camera, and then this poor guy hit a deer with a motorcycle. And then your child has to see these deer laying across along the road, and this can be a psychological problem, obviously. Too many times you think, well, I'll just swerve and miss the deer. And too many times people try to swerve and miss the deer, and they hit telephone poles, they hit trees, they roll the car through a ditch, and this is what happens. And you put yourself and your family in more danger. The best thing to do is stay straight on the road in your lane and use your brake to slow down. And if you're not able to, then you hit the deer. That's safer than trying to swerve. My name is Kenneth Page. Today we're going to discuss the animal overpopulation problem across America. First, we're going to discuss some of the dangers that animals pose to humans on a daily basis. We're also going to talk about the expenses and how much it actually costs us for these vehicle-animal encounters. Secondly, we're going to explore some of the reasons that we're in this situation, and we're going to talk about the competition for food with the different animals and the carrying capacity of different lands. My main sources for the information that I'm going to use today are some information I got from college courses that I took with the Professional Forestry and Wildlife Conservation Program out of Atlanta, Georgia. I also researched material from the Georgia National Resources, or Department of Natural Resources, and the U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Highway Administration Department. Let's begin on focusing on what dangers are actually out there for both the animals and humans. The largest concern, obviously, is injury and death for both. White-tailed deer are the most common species involved with fatal accidents across America. A study that was done by the National Resources Center, the U.S. National Resources Center, used statistics from 9 different states and came up with the fact that 77% of all fatal accidents are caused by white-tailed deer. You also have a problem with wild hogs. Wild hogs are big, massive animals who have a low center of gravity. So if you hit one of these animals, the chances for a horrific accident are very high. They can hurt you and your vehicle very much because they're heavy. You can see they can get big. This one here tipped the scales over 1,000 pounds. Here's some hogs that are actually eating roadkill. And hogs will not only need to eat vegetation, they can eat whatever. You can see where hogs dug up this ground here. This is a hospital lawn. This is a park. They're looking for grubs and insects. And they're going to find something to eat, if it's here or in your yard. And what about the growing expenses? Deer accidents result in $3.8 billion in traffic accidents, in insurance claims, and driver situations. And they result in about 140 human deaths annually. And we're not even included in the financial burden that it costs for the social outcomes of Lyme disease and the cost of removal of these carcasses, and to protect crops and protecting vegetation from the animals. Animal behavior is partially driven by survival, as in food, water, and shelter. The animal supermarket is literally your backyard. Thousands of acres of undisturbed land has been lost since the settlers arrived in the 1800s. Land grazing patterns have changed when domestic animals were introduced. As human development continues, which it most certainly will, it affects all species of wildlife that reside in the area. Deer and hog both require and use the same food sources and shelter. And they compete for this. They're both also horrific breeders. They can double or even triple their numbers annually. In 1 year, they can triple their numbers. This is devastating. And let's talk about carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the maximum number of deer or any animals that a certain piece of woods can maintain or keep healthy with its current vegetation. And of course, this depends on the vegetation and the location of it. Now that we understand the reasons for the problem, what tools do we have to try to fix some of the population problems? All 50 states have Department of Natural Resource Management programs. In the rural setting or the country setting, we can employ sport hunting, putting up fences. We can try to manage with trapping and monitor human development practices. In the urban environment, it's a little more delicate. You guys use a more delicate approach. We still use sport hunting, but they mainly use bow and arrow, and because of the short range of the bow and arrows, and they also use trapping, relocation, and even contraceptives. Conclusion. Today we looked at how we as humans brought many dangers into the animal world, and how, in return to the quest for survival, the animals most certainly are a danger to us now. We began by reflecting on what dangers are actually out there for the animals and the humans. We then discussed how the animal behavior is purely by survival. They're looking for food, water, and shelter. And finally, we discussed some of the reasonable methods that the Department of Transportation is using, or the Department of Natural Resources is using to combat the population problems. And I know everybody in this room loves wild animals, and you care about them being in our environment. But always remember, don't forget, that we put ourselves and these animals in this situation, and the animals don't have the brain capacity to protect themselves from us or us from them. So it's ultimately our responsibility to protect the animals and protect our families from each other.